This is my Volkswagen Fox, which looks like a completely normal commuter car. But under the bonnet, there is this 1.8 turbo GTI engine with around 220 horsepower. Over the past few weeks, I've been on a mission to build an insane sleeper from this standard Volkswagen Fox, which I bought a couple of months back. Say hello to the blue Volkswagen Fox. Since buying the car, we have removed the old 1.4 litre engine and replaced it with this 1.8 turbo GTI engine, which we previously removed from this donor Polo. There's one GTI engine. And despite never working on a Volkswagen before this build, in the previous video, we actually managed to get this engine in the Fox, and we somehow got the car driving. It's rubbish. Jeez. But there was a big issue. The Volkswagen Fox was now extremely dangerous because it had a ridiculously overpowered engine with standard brakes, suspension, wheels and tyres, making this car quite possibly the scariest thing I have ever driven.
Mate, this is scary.
So in this video, the plan is to fit thousands of pounds worth of modifications to turn this Fox into a true GTI. So the first place I'm going to start is with the wheels and the brakes on the Polo. These GTI wheels are really cool and I want to fit them on the Fox. Same goes with the brakes. They're bigger and better performing, so let's take them off. Now, both the wheels and the brakes on the Polo aren't in very good condition. The wheels have got curb marks all over them and the brakes definitely need repainting. So before we fit these to the Fox, they're going to need to be refurbished. So once the wheels and the brakes have been taken off the Polo, I could get them packed into the back of the Jazz and take them to the refurbishment shop. So I bought the wheels and brakes to 360 Alloys and Bodyshop. These guys are absolute wizards and they are the ones who managed to perfectly colour match the wheels on my Honda Jazz. So we will leave these guys to work their magic and come back later to see the result. Now, the next job I want to tackle is the handling. This car drives atrociously. As we discovered in the previous video, it is very scary. And that is because the suspension is so wobbly and floaty and the wheel arch gap is like this big. So we have got two major modifications to transform the way this car drives. First things first, coilovers. These are BC Racing's V1 series coilovers, and not only do they look absolutely beautiful, but they are going to make the Fox handle like it's on rails. And not to mention, get rid of this horrible wheel arch gap. Just take a look at how beautiful these coilovers are. BC have a habit of just making the most beautiful coilovers ever made, but these are going to completely transform the handling of the Fox. It's going to turn it from a floaty boat to a enhanced track vehicle. It's gonna be sick. Let's get them on. There you are. So after removing the first bolt to take out the shock, I have just realized something. We have currently got the Fox brake and hub assembly sort of combination on here. And obviously, as we saw earlier, we want to fit the Polo GTI brakes. And those GTI brakes only work with the Polo hub assembly. So before we fit the coilovers, we need to fit the Polo hub assembly onto here. So let's do that, and then we can fit the coilovers. So in order to remove basically everything in the wheel well, including the standard shock and the hub assembly all together, the first thing to do is to disconnect it all from the subframe. And there's just 3 13mm bolts to undo. I also had to disconnect the brake lines and drain the fluid. And once that's done, I can undo the hub nut and pull the drive shaft out from the back of the hub. Now I also need to quickly disconnect the tie rod from the steering knuckle, and then I can unplug the ABS sensor and move on to the final job, which is undoing the 3 top mount bolts holding in the shock. Now unfortunately, undoing the final bolt wasn't very straightforward. I ended up having to drill it out. There we go. And once I had done so, everything in the wheel well could be removed. jobs are good. This was the problem. That nut in there, see how this is like teared there? This nut was spinning in there, which meant that every time we were spinning this, that nut was spinning, which wasn't undoing the bolt. So we had to drill the bolt out.
I've always dirtied everything that I found.
Now we have taken this off the Fox, we can move on to fitting the Polo hub assembly and just take a look at the new bearings and the new hub assembly which I've bought. We could have got the hub assembly and the bearings off the donor Polo, but I wanted to get some nice fresh new ones, and these are going to look so good with the coilovers. I mean, that is going to look insane when that's fitted. So to get this all installed, I started off by lifting the coilover into the wheel well and then doing up the top mount nuts finger tight. Now, before fitting the hub assembly, I firstly put a little bit of copper grease just on the outside of the coilover and the inside of the hub sort of sleeve, and this is going to allow it to be much easier to install. So as for getting it installed, I could position it just under the coilover and then give it a little tippy tap with a hammer, and that's going to allow that hub sleeve to slide over the bottom of the coilover. I could then get the drive shaft refitted and get the subframe reconnected to the lower ball joint. And then after getting the tie rod reinstalled, the last thing to do was to tighten up the 3 top mount nuts. That is seriously on there. Got a bit of a CV boot leak there. There we go. So it seems to be a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 step back with this. We've ran into a couple of problems, which I'm going to show you now. So firstly, we have the drive shaft. If you look in the CV boot, there is a little nick which is letting all of the grease out, and I've just had to clean it all up, and that basically means we need a new CV boot, and I need to do that before the drive shaft goes in the hub. Also, the tie rod end has got a big rip in it. That is an MOT failure, and on top of that, the nut seized on, so I had to cut it off. So that needs replacing as well, new tie rod end. So basically, we've got a few jobs that we need to get on with before we can fit the new hub and the new coilover. So I'm going to come back to this later, but for now, let's do the rears. This is going to need a whack. That went smoother than I thought it would. Really? So luckily for me, doing the rears is a lot easier than doing the fronts. The main thing to do is to undo the 2 bolts at the bottom of each of the rear shocks, and that's going to allow the rear beam to fully come down, which will then in turn allow us to remove the springs. And then taking out the shocks themselves is nice and easy. There's just 2 top mount bolts to undo, and then it can be taken out. Now, something I really like about these Volkswagens is this rear beam design. Those 2 bottom shock bolts we undid earlier are responsible for holding up this whole rear beam, and it makes it really easy to install new suspension together as long as you have a gearbox jack. So once I'd got those new springs in, I could then swap over the top mount from the old shock to our new BC shock and then get those fitted. So the BCs on the rear have now been fitted and they're looking great. We have just had some new parts arrive. We've got our CV boot kit and our tie rod end, so we can now fix our faulty boot and our faulty tie rod end. Let's get these on. Now, replacing an old CV boot is quite possibly my least favourite job to do on a car because it is just so messy. But either way, the first thing to do is to peel back the old boot, give everything a bit of a clean with some brake cleaner, and then I can get out the old trusty angle grinder and chop off the old boot. Once that's done, I can then use a hammer and a microfiber to gently tap off the old CV joint. I can then get the new CV boot and get that fitted over the drive shaft. And before getting it all fitted back together, I need to use the grease that's supplied with the kit and smear it all inside the CV boot and the joint.
Just to make sure that's all in.
And now comes the job of hitting on the CV joint with the hammer. This is a job which I am notoriously bad at. When building the Honda Jazz, this was probably the only thing I just simply couldn't do.
This is not my forte, I'll be first to admit.
I can tell.
So I was really hoping I could get it this time.
Doing this job is my arch nemesis, I'm pretty sure. It's on.
Oh my god, Jav, we did it.
That took no time at all.
That literally took us 5 minutes.
Literally.
That didn't take us 2 hours.
Not at all.
On the video, you can see that was like cut, straight on.
So that is one CV boot replaced. Now we can get on with fitting the coilovers and the new hub assembly. But don't worry, I haven't forgotten about the tie rod. Equally, you shouldn't forget to run a CarVertical check on a car you're thinking of buying. CarVertical is the car history checker, and I used it when buying the Fox to help me get some more information on it, which in turn helped me get some money off. On the Fox's report, you can see there are 3 green ticks, so the report is clean, but after a bit of digging in the history section, you can see that the previous owner only owned it for 1 month, which did raise my suspicions and allowed me to negotiate some money off the price.
There we go.
However, CarVertical doesn't only help you negotiate, it will also help outline the money pits, so you can stay well clear of them. This Volkswagen Fox, for example, has been caught having odometer fraud.
Mate, look at that.
I think it's broken.
I think it's broken.
As we can see from this graph, the miles have definitely been rolled back, which is information you'd probably want to know. So to check any car with CarVertical, click the link in the description of this video and use the code JACK20 at the checkout for a 20% discount on the price of a report. And you never know, it could save you a load of time and money. So after finishing up the tie rod on the passenger side, I went over to go and have a look at the driver's side one, and it had the exact same fault with the rubber that I hadn't noticed before, so I went ahead and changed this one as well.
There we go. Damn it.
So these are the old tie rods, and as you can see, they have got big rips in the rubber, and that's the reason why we needed to replace them. Now, because this rubber is perished, I thought it'd be worth a look at the lower ball joint, which also has a similar sort of rubber. And what do you know? The lower ball joint is really perished, even worse than the tie rod ends were. And because this lower ball joint for that side was perished, I thought, let's check the other lower ball joint. And if you have a look in here, I didn't notice it when fitting this initially, but you can see that rubber is completely perished in there as well. So that is not ideal. These also need replacing. So what started as simply fitting a new set of coilovers has turned into replacing practically every single handling component on this Fox, which is not what I had planned, but this car really needed it. I love it how this has gone from fitting a set of coilovers to now fixing whole car. And as for replacing this lower ball joint, there's just those 3 13mm bolts connecting it to the subframe that I need to undo, and then that big nut on the top. There we go. As you can see, this one is also ruined. So we've got some new ones now. New one.
Life is for life with you. My God is telling me don't go. So won't you stay a while, who knew that we could end up super close.
So after getting the driver's side one sorted, I could move on to the passenger side. And now that I'd got this side installed, I was finally finished. So now those coilovers are fitted, we can move on to installing the second big mod to help the handling on the Fox, and that is these tyres. So these are a set of Nankang AR1 semi-slick tyres. These are proper track day, sporty tyres. These are gonna make the car drive so much better in the dry. They're not gonna make you drive better in the wet. In fact, they're really dangerous in the wet. So we wanna make sure not to drive the car when it's raining. But in the dry, these are gonna make the Fox stick to the road like nothing else. So let's get them on the wheels. But before we can get those tyres fitted, we of course need to go and pick the wheels up from 360 Alloys. Hello mate, you good? Mate, I can't wait to see what the wheels and the brakes look like. I am buzzing. As you can see, 360 Alloys have done an incredible job at refurbishing my wheels and brakes. If any of you guys need any similar work done or any body work done to your car, make sure to contact 360 Alloys. I'll leave all of their contact information in the description of this video. Well, what do we think of the wheels? I am in love with this paint. It's got sort of a sparkle to it, which definitely is going to set these wheels off. A few of you might think silver is boring, but I like silver, and it's definitely going to work with the end product of the Fox. And getting these wheels on with those calipers and all of the stuff we've already got on the car, it is going to look 10 out of 10. So let's get back to the unit and get it all fitted. So once we were back, we got the local tyre man to fit the tyres onto the wheels. So you are probably wondering why I have put these wheels and tyres on before fitting the brakes. The first reason is that I really want to see what this thing looks like with the coilovers on. We are just running the standard ride height that the BC coilovers come with, so we'll see if we need to go lower or higher when we get it down. But the second reason is that because we've done all of this suspension work, we've basically rebuilt everything in the wheel wells, we need to take this car for an alignment at Evolution Autoworks. So we've got that booked in and we need to leave now. So let's see what the car looks like first. Oh, it's properly sat down. Right, okay. That is so much lower. We still have a big wheel arch gap, so we have further to go. We will do some adjusting to the coilovers to make it even lower, but you cannot tell me it is like a completely different car now. So Adam from Evolution Autoworks soon came to pick up the car from the unit so we could take it to his workshop to get all of the alignment work done.
Here's the line.
Oh, this guy looks so good, man. Oh my God, look at the wheels. This looks insane. Oh, I cannot believe how good this looks. Adam, you cannot tell me that is probably one of the most masterful pieces of automotive engineering you have ever stepped foot in. Right, here's a question. Volkswagen Fox GTI or Aston Martin V8 Vantage? You have to let me know in the comments. I mean, if you're not saying Fox, you're just wrong.
Absolutely.
The Aston Martin is that's just the daily knockabout. That Fox is my pride and joy right there.
In space, got a daydream running through my brain every day.
So we soon arrived at Evolution Autoworks and we could get the Fox up on the ramp. Now the guys here are absolute experts. They do a lot of motorsport work alongside general mechanical stuff, and they'll be sorting out the Fox with an amazing motorsport setup. So as for getting this thing aligned, we need to basically get it on these red alignment tables. Now, I'm not even going to pretend to understand how this works, but essentially you put a string around the car and you can measure things. Before we do so, we actually need to lower the coilovers because I mentioned they need to go lower because there's too much of a wheel arch gap, and to align it properly, the coilovers need to be in their sort of final position, their final like height for the alignment to work basically. So we're gonna do that, then get it aligned. So Adam could get out the C-spanners and start lowering the front coilovers. After the fronts were done, he could move on to the rears. Right, so the coilovers have now been lowered to their maximum amount, and yeah, it can't go any lower. So it's going to be very interesting to see how low the car is now the coilovers have been fully slammed. We're going to get the car on the ground and find out. That's it, is it? Damn, that still has a bit of wheel arch gap. But to be fair, these are for a Polo, these coilovers, which would make sense. Now, I think this is good actually. I think that's like a sporty.
It's usable.
That's usable, yeah. That's it, and it's not gonna like crash if I go over a speed bump. So after getting the car to its final ride height, Adam can work his magic by giving this car a string alignment. This basically involves getting the car on these red alignment tables and then hanging 2 strings on either side of the car, which are carefully centered to the chassis center line. This basically gives you a reference so that you can measure the toe angles of each wheel individually. And after some measuring, the alignment adjustments can be made accordingly. So if any of you need motorsport work to be done to your project, or if you just want something to be fixed well, I'll leave a link to Evolution Autoworks in the description of this video. So the car has been aligned. We have now magically arrived here at The Exhaust Company, which a lot of you might guess, we are here to make an exhaust. Many of you know from the previous video that the Fox has a missing rear section, so we are here to get a new rear section built. Let's go. So after getting the car in the unit and on the ramp, we could start with planning the exhaust.
So we just need to make this bit go here with a little box.
A little box.
That's all we need to do. A hole out the bumper to make 2 exhausts come out.
Downturn.
A downturn.
Race car.
So as for getting this exhaust built, as I'm sure a lot of you know by now, a custom exhaust requires a load of skill, precision welding, cutting, measuring, all sorts of different processes, and the guys here at The Exhaust Company are experts. Right, so here it is. This is our new rear section. It is looking absolutely beautiful. We have gone for a silencer because we will be fitting a Zero Cell Sports Cat into this car at some point. Also, take a look at our new exhaust tip. We've got lots of pie cuts. I think this looks really cool, and it's going to sit sort of up here like that, and it's going to look absolutely beautiful. So let's get it on and see what it sounds like. So after getting the exhaust lifted into place, the last thing to do was to get some hangers made. Lav, ready when you are. Yeah, that sounds sick. Give it a couple flips. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So that is the exhaust done. It is looking so good. I love the downturned exhaust tip with the pie cuts. It is looking sensational. But now we can get the car back to the unit and get the brakes fitted. So along with our newly refurbished GTI brake calipers, we'll also be fitting these magnificent M-Tech drilled and grooved discs alongside some new EBC yellow stuff brake pads. These pads are a great compound for fast road and a bit of track use, and because our new discs are drilled and grooved, this is going to help with our heat dissipation, which will in turn help reduce brake fade. So starting with fitting the front brakes, the process here is the exact same as if I was just fitting these brakes onto the Polo, and that is because we have already fit the Polo hub assembly onto the Fox. So these new calipers are now a straight fit. So after installing the caliper carrier, I can then get the shims for the brake pads fitted, and then I can get the brake pads themselves in. The GTI caliper can then be installed, And then finally, I can connect up the brake line. What do we think of the front brakes? Those are looking fantastic. They do look a little bit like Ronald McDonald's brakes. The color scheme is very McDonald's-esque. But now that's done, we can move on to the other side, and then we have a disc conversion to do on the rears. So as for the rear brakes on the Fox, at the minute they are these drum brakes. Now manufacturers will fit a car with drum brakes because they are cheaper to make and maintain, but they have one serious flaw, and that is heat dissipation. Now if you're running a normal set of road brakes, generally more heat means worse braking performance. And the more you drive your car and the harder you push your brakes, the hotter they'll get. So these drum brakes are not very good when you push them. Now this isn't usually a problem with commuter cars because in the eyes of the manufacturer, you're never going to drive the car hard enough to actually notice a drop in braking performance. However, this Fox is quickly turning into a race car, so something needs to be done about these inferior brakes. So the solution is to do a caliper conversion on the rear, again using the Polo GTI brakes. Now for the most part, a caliper conversion is a lot easier said than done. It usually takes quite a lot of work, but on this Fox, you'll see that it's going to be a lot easier. So after taking off the drum brake, we have noticed something quite pleasing actually. So this is the standard Fox trailing arm, and you might notice that it literally comes with the brackets to bolt the caliper rail on, or the caliper carrier, which is so helpful. We won't have to do any modification to this. All we have to do is get the handbrake cable and the brake lines sorted out, which is very useful indeed. I think the reason why Volkswagen do this is because they like efficient production. So all of the models with calipers have the same trailing arm as this Fox, which has drum brakes, which makes this very easy. So before fitting the GTI brakes onto the Fox, I firstly had to take the handbrake cable and the brake lines from the Polo.
There we go. Nice. All right. Brake lined.
I got it.
That is handbrake cable numero dos.
So much fast.
Yeah, well you know how to do it, it's like ding.
So once I had removed the handbrake cables from the Polo, I could then take the old cables out of the Fox. Once the old cables are out, I could then get the Polo cables fitted. After that, I swapped over the brake lines. So after making sure to do up the brake lines with the spanner, we could then get the GTI caliper setup fitted exactly as if we were fitting the brakes normally, because now these brakes are a straight fit. And whilst we were at it, I thought it was worth fitting some new bearings as well.
These are shims, and they're going in. Right, happy with that.
We could then get the other side done. So that is all of the brakes fitted, and we have just bled them off camera and all seems okay. But before we test them and get the wheels back on and test it to see if it works, we have two more modifications to make the handling even better. And that is, to start off with, these adjustable drop links, and they're going to sit sort of in between here and the anti-roll bar just in there, and that's going to make the steering responsiveness a bit better and reduce our body roll. And secondly, we have this strut brace, which is going to connect up the two top mounts of our shocks and make everything even more stiff and just make it into more of a race car.
Now, a lot of you might be wondering how exactly the drop links will help the handling on the Fox, and it's not really the drop links themselves, but it's the anti-roll bar or the ARB. Now, the ARB connects the two front wheels together, and by doing this, it helps share the load when you're going around a corner, and this helps reduce body roll. Before fitting these drop links, the ARB wasn't doing anything because it wasn't connected up, but now that we are connecting it up, it's going to help increase the handling feel of this car. And as for this new cross brace, it basically connects the two suspension top mounts together, and this helps increase chassis rigidity. Once that was all done, I could then get the wheels fitted for the final time and add a little finishing touch.
How good is it going to look on a scale of 1 to a million? The same, but with brakes and centre caps. This car is actually going to be so sick. It's such a sleeper right now.
Yeah.
Race car. They don't just work, they work tremendously well. It actually feels so much better. Wow, that has made a huge difference. Oh my, genuinely made a huge difference.
Hello, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail to hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know what we...
Well, I think the Fox is coming along leaps and bounds. We've done some great upgrades in this video, but we have lots more to come. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to smash that like button below this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.